Blood spattered across the freshly fallen snow as Willow Green collapsed beside the firewood pile, her body finally surrendering to the exhaustion and grief that had been her only companions since burying her husband 3 weeks prior. The harsh Montana winter of 1879 showed no mercy to widows, especially those left alone on isolated homesteads with dwindling supplies and frozen hopes. Logan Yates spotted the fallen figure from the ridge while tracking a wounded buck. He'd been riding these mountains for 2 days, trying to put distance between himself and the memories of Bannack. The woman lay motionless against the woodpile, her dark coat nearly invisible against the weathered logs. For a moment, he considered riding on a stranger's troubles weren't his concern. But something in the stillness of her form pulled him down from his saddle and across the snow-covered yard. "Madam," he called, approaching cautiously, one hand near his pistol out of habit. When she didn't respond, he quickened his pace, kneeling beside her. Blood trickled from her palm where she'd cut herself on the axe that lay beside her. But it was the tear-streaked face, frozen in grief, that made him catch his breath. With gentle hands, Logan lifted the unconscious woman. She was lighter than she should be, her frame slight beneath layers of worn clothing. The cabin door stood ajar, and he carried her inside, laying her on a narrow bed in the corner of the one-room structure. The interior was neat but sparse, the fireplace cold with only ashes remaining. A single chair, a small table, and a chest comprised the entirety of the furnishings. Logan worked quickly, building a fire from the kindling beside the hearth. As warmth began to fill the room, he turned his attention back to the woman. She couldn't be much past 25, her face pale and drawn with dark circles beneath her eyes. Her chestnut hair had come loose from its pins, falling across the thin pillow. The wound on her hand was minor, but her cold skin worried him. He found a clean cloth and wrapped her palm, then covered her with the single blanket he discovered folded at the foot of the bed. Only then did he notice the wedding band on her finger and the absence of any male presence in the cabin. Outside, he gathered the scattered firewood she'd been collecting and stacked it neatly by the door. His horse, a sturdy buckskin gelding, waited patiently where he'd left him. Logan retrieved his bedroll and saddlebags, unsure why he was staying but certain he couldn't leave. By the time Willow opened her eyes, the cabin was warm and filled with the aroma of coffee. She startled upright, fear flashing across her face at the sight of the stranger sitting by her fire. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice hoarse but strong. "What are you doing in my home?" Logan raised his hands, palms forward. "Name's Logan Yates, madam. Found you passed out in the snow by your woodpile. Figured you might prefer waking up warm inside rather than frozen outside." Willow's hand moved to her bandaged palm, confusion giving way to memory. "I was cutting wood and got dizzy," she admitted reluctantly. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Yates, but I'm fine now." Logan raised an eyebrow, taking in her trembling hands and hollow cheeks. "When's the last time you ate, madam?" The flush that colored her pale face told him everything. He reached for his saddlebag and pulled out a package wrapped in oilcloth. "I've got some jerky and hardtack. Not much of a meal, but it'll keep you upright. Coffee's hot if you'd like some." Willow hesitated, pride warring with hunger. "I don't take charity." "It's not charity when it's offered to a neighbor," Logan replied easily. "Besides, I've been eating my own cooking for months. Would be nice to share a meal with someone who might appreciate conversation that doesn't involve my horse." A reluctant smile touched her lips. "Your horse isn't much for talk then. Worst conversationalist in the territory, keeps telling the same stories." He handed her a tin cup of coffee, which she accepted with her uninjured hand. "I'm Willow Green," she said after taking a sip. Was my husband's homestead." "He's been gone 3 weeks now." Logan nodded, offering no empty condolences. "Rough time to be alone." "I don't have much choice in the matter," she replied, straightening her shoulders. "I intend to keep this place running." "Admirable," Logan said, "but even the strongest need help sometimes." "I've got nowhere to be for a few days. Could lend a hand getting you set for winter proper." Willow studied him over the rim of her cup, wariness evident in her green eyes. "Why would you do that? You don't know me," Logan shrugged. "Been riding alone a long time. Helping you would be a change of pace." He didn't mention the haunted look he recognized in her eyes, the same one he saw in his own reflection each morning. After a long silence, she nodded. 3 days, I'll pay you what I can." "We'll work that out later," he said, rising to his feet. "For now, you should eat something, then I'll finish with that wood pile." For 3 days, Logan worked from sunrise to sunset. He split enough firewood to last through winter, patched the leaking roof, hunted game to stock Willow's empty larder, and repaired the broken fence around what remained of her garden. He slept in the barn despite her reluctant offer of the cabin floor, giving her the privacy and distance she clearly valued. Willow, for her part, gradually revealed pieces of her story. She and Thomas Green had come west from Ohio 2 years earlier, chasing dreams of land and independence. They'd been making progress on the homestead when influenza took him, leaving her alone 20 miles from the nearest neighbor. "Why not go back east?" Logan asked on the 3rd evening as they sat by the fire, sharing a rabbit stew she'd prepared. Willow stared into the flames. "There's nothing for me there. My parents died years ago and Thomas was my only family." Her fingers twisted her wedding band. "Besides, this land is mine now. I worked alongside him to make something of it. I won't abandon it." Logan nodded, understanding the stubborn pride that kept her rooted to this harsh place. He recognized it in himself, the unwillingness to surrender what had been earned through blood and sacrifice. As promised, on the 4th morning, Logan saddled his horse at dawn. Willow stood in the doorway, arms crossed against the cold. "Your payment," she said, holding out a small pouch. "It's not much, but it's what I can spare." Logan pushed her hand gently away. "Keep it, you'll need it come spring for seeds." "I don't like being indebted," she insisted. "Then consider it settled with that stew last night," he replied with a smile. "Best meal I've had in months." Willow's expression softened. "Will you be heading to Bannack?" "No," Logan said, his voice suddenly tight. "Staying clear of towns for a while." She studied him with new curiosity. "You running from something, Mr. Yates?" "Just memories, madam." He tipped his hat and swung into the saddle. "Take care of yourself, Mrs. Green." He was halfway down the hill when her voice called after him. "The pass to the north will be snowed in soon," she said, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "If you find yourself needing shelter before spring, this door will be open to you." Logan nodded, unable to explain the warmth that spread through his chest at her words. He rode away without looking back, telling himself he was simply moving on as he always did. But 3 weeks later, as a blizzard howled across the mountains, Logan found himself once again approaching Willow's cabin. This time, smoke rose steadily from the chimney and the windows glowed with golden light. He hesitated at the edge of the clearing, questioning his decision to return. Before he could retreat, the door opened and Willow stepped out, shielding a lantern against the driving snow. Her face registered surprise, then something that might have been relief. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten the way," she called over the wind. Logan dismounted, leading his exhausted horse toward the barn. "Just passing through," he said, though they both knew the storm made that a lie. That night, as the blizzard raged outside, they shared another meal by the fire. Logan noticed small changes in the cabin curtains at the window made from flour sacks, a bookshelf he hadn't built holding a few precious volumes, and a mended quilt across the bed that hadn't been there before. "I've been keeping busy," Willow explained when she caught him looking around. "Idle hands invite dark thoughts." "I understand that better than most," Logan admitted. As the evening progressed, the silence between them grew comfortable rather than strained. Willow worked on mending while Logan cleaned his pistol, a ritual that had always centered him. "You're good with that," she observed. "Were you a lawman?" Logan's hands stilled. "For a time in Bannack. What happened?" He considered deflecting the question, but found himself wanting to share the truth with her. "The sheriff I worked for turned out to be leading a gang of road agents. They were robbing and killing miners coming down from Virginia City. He set the pistol aside. When I found out, I confronted him. Things didn't go well. Willow's needle paused. Did you kill him? No, Logan said quietly. But I killed 3 of his men before they wounded me and left me for dead. By the time I recovered, vigilantes had hanged the sheriff and most of his gang. His fingers traced the scar along his ribs. Left me wondering if I was any better than them, taking the law into my own hands. There's a difference between justice and revenge, Willow said softly. Sounds to me like you were fighting for the former. Logan met her gaze, struck by the absence of judgment in her eyes. Not everyone sees it that way. I'm not everyone, she replied simply. The storm lasted 4 days, trapping them together in the small cabin. They established routines that somehow felt familiar despite their newness. Logan tending the fire and animals, Willow cooking and maintaining the household. They shared stories in the evenings, carefully at first, then with growing ease as trust built between them. Willow spoke of her childhood in Ohio, her marriage to Thomas, and their journey west. Logan shared tales of his youth in Pennsylvania, his time as a Union soldier during the war, and his wanderings afterward. Neither pushed the other for more than they were willing to give, respecting the tender places in each other's histories. On the 5th morning, Logan woke to clear skies and sunlight glinting off pristine snow. He stood in the doorway, knowing he should leave yet finding reasons to delay. Willow joined him, her shoulder nearly touching his. Beautiful, isn't it? She said, her breath visible in the cold air. Yes, Logan agreed, though he was looking at her profile rather than the landscape. Willow turned, catching his gaze. Something shifted between them, a current neither acknowledged but both felt. I should move on, Logan said, breaking the moment. Trail will be passable by midday. Disappointment flickered across Willow's face before she nodded. Of course. You have your own path to follow. I do, he agreed, but added, though it seems to keep leading back here. Her eyes met his, searching. Perhaps there's a reason for that, Mr. Yates. Logan, he corrected gently. After sharing a roof for nearly a week, I think we're past formalities. A smile touched her lips. Logan, then? She hesitated before continuing. Winter's long in these parts, if your travels bring you this way again. I'll remember, he promised. This time when he rode away, Logan knew with certainty he would return. And over the following months, he did, sometimes staying for days, other times just passing through long enough to share a meal and ensure Willow was managing. Each visit deepened the connection between them, though neither spoke of it directly. As winter gave way to spring, Willow's homestead began to flourish under their combined efforts. Logan helped her plant the garden, repair the chicken coop, and begin construction on a proper barn. The cabin, too, transformed, becoming more of a home with each improvement they made together. It was during the apple blossom season when everything changed. Logan had been gone nearly 3 weeks, the longest stretch since winter. He returned to find Willow in the garden, her sleeves rolled up and dirt smudging her cheeks as she tended young plants. She didn't hear his approach, and he paused to watch her, the sunlight catching in her hair, the determined set of her shoulders, the gentle way her hands worked the earth. In that moment, Logan recognized the truth he'd been avoiding for months. This woman, this place, they had become more than a refuge. They had become home. Willow looked up, shading her eyes against the sun. Her face brightened at the sight of him, and she rose to her feet, brushing soil from her hands. You're back, she said simply, but her voice carried a warmth that reached deep inside him. I am, Logan replied, dismounting and leading his horse toward her. Brought something for you. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a package wrapped in brown paper. Willow accepted it with curious hands, carefully unwrapping the bundle to reveal garden seeds and a small book of poetry. The merchant in Helena said these flowers would do well in this soil, Logan explained, suddenly uncertain. And the book? Well, I remembered you mentioning you enjoyed poetry. Willow's fingers traced the embossed cover. This is too much. Not for you, Logan said quietly. She looked up at him then, and the vulnerability in her eyes matched his own. Why do you keep coming back, Logan? The question hung between them, demanding truth after months of careful avoidance. Logan took a breath, setting aside the caution that had guided him for years. Because when I'm gone, I think of you, he admitted. Because this place being here with you feels right in a way nothing has since before the war. He gestured to the homestead around them. You've built something real here, Willow, something honest and good, and I find myself wanting to be part of it. Tears gathered in Willow's eyes, but she didn't look away. I'm still Thomas's widow. I know, Logan said gently, and I'd never ask you to forget him. He's part of who you are, part of what made this place, but I'm hoping there might be room for new beginnings. Willow's hand trembled slightly as she reached up to touch his face. I've been so afraid, she whispered. Afraid of feeling this way again, afraid of losing someone else I care for. Logan caught her hand in his, holding it against his cheek. I can't promise nothing will ever happen to me. Life out here doesn't offer those guarantees, but I can promise that as long as I draw breath, I'll find my way back to you. The kiss, when it finally came, felt like coming home after a long journey. Gentle at first, then deepening with all the emotion they'd held back through the long winter months. When they parted, Willow's cheeks were flushed and Logan felt lighter than he had in years. Stay, she said simply. Not just for a few days this time. Logan smiled, gathering her closer. I was hoping you'd say that. The transition from occasional visitor to permanent resident happened naturally. Logan moved his few possessions into the cabin, sleeping on a pallet by the fire while they navigated the changing nature of their relationship. They worked side by side during the day and talked long into the evenings, learning each other in new ways. As spring blossomed into summer, so did their feelings for one another. Logan found himself watching Willow when she didn't notice the way she hummed while working, how she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, the quiet strength evident in everything she did. For her part, Willow began to reach for his hand when they walked together, to lean against him in the evenings as they watched the sunset, to seek his opinions on decisions about the homestead. Word of their arrangement eventually reached the nearest town, bringing the local preacher to their door one Sunday morning. The elderly man made no accusation, but pointedly mentioned the importance of proper appearances. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies rise from the tall grass, Logan took Willow's hand. The preacher had a point, he said carefully. Not about appearances, but about doing things properly. Willow turned to him, her expression guarded. What are you saying? Logan reached into his pocket and withdrew a simple silver band. I'm saying I love you, Willow Green, and if you'll have me, I'd like to spend the rest of my days proving it. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at the ring. Where did you get this? Had it made in Helena last trip? Been carrying it around waiting for the right moment. He smiled self-consciously. Never been much good with words or timing, but I know what I feel. I want to build a life with you right here on this land you fought so hard to keep. Willow took the ring from his palm, examining it in the fading light. Inside the band, she found their initials engraved with a simple date the day Logan had first found her by the woodpile. You remembered, she whispered. I remember everything about you, he said softly. The way you looked that first day, how you refused to take charity even when you needed help, the strength it took to keep going after Thomas died. He covered her hand with his. I remember the first time I saw you smile, really smile, and how it felt like watching the sun come out after a storm. Willow closed her fingers around the ring. I never expected to feel this way again, she admitted. After Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over. I was just trying to survive. Her eyes met his. But you didn't just help me survive, Logan. You helped me remember how to live. Is that a yes? He asked, hope rising in his chest. Instead of answering, Willow slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly alongside her first wedding band, a visual representation of a heart large enough to honor the past while embracing the future. They married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the homestead. The preacher officiated, and a handful of neighbors Willow had barely known attended, drawn by the rarity of a celebration in such isolated country. Logan wore his one good shirt and had his hair cut by Willow the night before. She wore a dress of deep blue that had once belonged to her mother, with wildflowers in her hair that Logan had gathered at dawn. Their vows were brief but heartfelt, spoken in voices steady with certainty. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Logan kissed Willow with a tenderness that made the women present dab at their eyes, and the men look away in awkward appreciation. That night, after their guests had departed and the homestead fell quiet, they stood together in the cabin that had witnessed their journey from strangers to partners to lovers. "Mrs. Yates," Logan said, testing the name with wonder in his voice. Willow smiled up at him. "It still sounds strange, but I think I like it. We can take our time getting used to it," he said, drawing her into his arms. "We have plenty of that ahead of us." As summer turned to fall and then to winter again, the homestead flourished under their combined care. They added a proper bedroom to the cabin, expanded the barn, and increased their livestock to include a milk cow and several sheep. Willow's garden produced bountifully, allowing them to preserve food for the colder months and even trade with neighbors. Logan occasionally rode into Helena or Virginia City for supplies and to sell furs and extra livestock, but he always returned within days, unwilling to be parted from Willow for long. On his trips, he sometimes heard whispers of his past tales of the former lawman who had stood against corruption, but no one ever connected those stories to the quiet rancher who minded his own business and hurried back to his wife. As their first anniversary approached, Willow began to exhibit signs that Logan initially mistook for illness. Her usual energy waned, and she often rested in the afternoons, something the hard-working woman had never done before. When she began to avoid certain foods that had previously been favorites, Logan's concern grew. "I'm taking you to see the doctor in Helena," he insisted one morning after finding her retching behind the cabin. "Something's not right." Willow smiled despite her pale complexion. "There's no need for that. I know exactly what's happening." Logan frowned, touching her forehead to check for fever. "Then enlighten me because I'm worried." She took his hand and moved it to rest against her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby, Logan." His expression transformed from concern to astonishment. "A baby? Are you certain?" "As certain as any woman can be," she confirmed, watching his face carefully. "It should arrive by late summer." Logan sank to his knees before her, pressing his face against her middle. "A child," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Our child." Willow ran her fingers through his hair. "Are you happy?" He looked up at her, eyes shining. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it. I never thought I'd have this: a wife, a home, a family." He rose to his feet, cradling her face in his hands. "You've given me everything I never dared hope for, Willow." The months that followed were filled with preparations. Logan worked tirelessly to ensure the homestead would be ready for the new arrival. He built a cradle from pine harvested from their land, constructed a rocking chair for Willow to nurse the baby, and rode all the way to Helena to secure the services of a midwife when the time came. Willow, despite the discomforts of pregnancy, continued to manage their home with characteristic determination. She sewed tiny garments from fabric Logan brought back from town and prepared a special corner of their bedroom for the baby. In quiet moments, she would speak softly to her growing belly, sharing stories about both Thomas and Logan, ensuring their child would know all the strands that had woven together to create their family. On a hot August evening, as thunderclouds gathered on the horizon, Willow's labor began. Logan rode through the darkness to fetch the midwife, returning just as the storm broke overhead. For hours, he paced outside their bedroom, banished by the midwife who allowed only another local woman to assist her. The storm had passed and dawn was breaking when a new cry joined the morning birdsong. The bedroom door opened, and the tired midwife gestured for Logan to enter. "You have a daughter, Mr. Yates," she announced. "Strong lungs on that one." Logan approached the bed where Willow lay, exhausted but radiant, a small bundle cradled against her chest. She looked up at him with tears of joy trailing down her cheeks. "Come meet your daughter," she whispered. With trembling hands, Logan accepted the tiny infant. Dark hair like her mother's dusted her perfect head, and when she opened her eyes, he saw his own blue gaze reflected back at him. "She's beautiful," he managed, voice catching. Like her mother, Willow smiled, reaching for his hand. "What shall we call her?" Logan looked down at the miracle in his arms, this new life born of their love and resilience. "How about Hope? Because that's what she represents for us, hope for the future we're building together." "Hope Yates." Willow tested the name, her smile growing. "It's perfect." As autumn painted the surrounding mountains with gold and crimson, the little family settled into their new routines. Hope thrived under her parents' devoted care, her personality emerging more each day, stubborn like her mother, watchful like her father. The homestead, once a place of grief and solitude for Willow, now rang with laughter and the gentle murmurs of a family finding its rhythm. On a crisp October afternoon, as the first snow dusted the distant peaks, Logan found Willow standing beside the firewood pile where he had first discovered her nearly 2 years earlier. Hope slept against her chest in a sling Willow had fashioned. "What are you thinking about?" Logan asked, coming to stand beside her. Willow looked up at him, her eyes clear and peaceful. "I was remembering that day, how I thought everything was ending when I fell here." She reached for his hand. "I never imagined that moment would actually be a beginning." Logan squeezed her fingers gently. "Life has a way of surprising us. If I hadn't been tracking that buck, if I'd chosen another path that day." "But you didn't," Willow said simply. "You found me when I needed someone most. You lifted me up when I couldn't stand on my own." Logan wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing his wife and daughter close against the autumn chill. "And you gave me a reason to stop wandering. You lit a fire in my life that will never go out." Together they walked back toward their cabin, where warmth and the future awaited. The woodpile stood neatly stacked against the coming winter, a reminder of how a chance encounter beside it had changed everything, bringing light and love to two souls who had thought their brightest days were behind them. As they crossed the threshold, Hope stirred and opened her eyes, reaching a tiny hand toward her father's face. Logan caught it gently, pressing a kiss to her perfect fingers. In that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that all the paths of his life, even the darkest ones, had been leading him here. To this woman, this child, this home they had built together. The door closed behind them as the first snowflakes began to fall. But inside, the fire burned bright just as it would for all the years to come.